Oh, hey, didn't see it there. Oh, what do I have? Oh, this is my Transformers Prime Voyager class Ultra Magnus that comes with the Forge of Solace. Oh, you don't care. Yeah, oh, we were talking about that I grew up watching Transformers Generation 1 at 4 in the morning, and then that became Transformers Prime. But one day, my brain got a little bit too developed. We'll say, like, when I was like 10, 11 years old, and I learned that there's Transformers on the big screen. We're talking about the Micheal Bay films. Yay! Even though I was a couple years too late to fully appreciate it, after all, the third one had just come out at this point, I still loved these movies. To the point where when the fourth one came out, I would watch that in theaters. It was the first movie I ever seen in theaters. And since then, I've gone back and rewatched the films plenty of times, and I make sure to see every new Transformers movie in theaters. And they've got a new one coming out. It looks pretty good. So, there's no better time than now to go back and look at some of the older movies. And of course, everything starts somewhere, so we have to start first at Transformers 2007. So the creation of this film is so strange to me. Not because of how it happened, but because of the people involved. You got Steven Spielberg, fan of the toys, great choice. Both writers, Ulrich and Kurtzman, fans of the toys, perfect. Let's bring Micheal Bay in, the guy who directs adult action movies. He's the perfect fit for a movie all about toys. He said no pretty fast. Bay wanted nothing to do with it, no surprise there. But working with Spielberg is a pretty big chance that just doesn't come around every day. He changed his mind pretty quick. Now in the director's seat for Transformers, what was the first thing Micheal Bay did? Military. Needs more military. This isn't about kids' toys anymore. This isn't a movie for the kids anymore. It needs more alien warfare. So yeah, Bay took the reins of the project and turned it into pretty much what we know it is now. Action, explosions, and we'll just say interesting jokes. And while the film's release went off without a hitch, and the film instantly became a box office hit, lots of Bay's choices would later be criticized. They still are. These movies and a lot of the decisions involving them are constantly made fun of, joked about, and questioned. But still, Transformers 2007 has managed to remain a fan favorite. And that's me. I'm a fan and it's a favorite. Regardless of what I say, I love these movies. I love them to death, and I think there's so much good you can say about them, but just as much bad. And I think that's what makes them so interesting. Plus, the circumstances are just really funny about everything. So, yeah. So before we get too far, and before we actually get into the movie, please show some support if you end up enjoying this video. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the video. That's pretty much it. The Cube. Here it's what creates our Transformers, as well as tears them apart, as it basically causes them to have a civil war. They start to fight, and eventually, boom, just no more planet. It's gone, the cube's gone to space, yeah. So they all leave Cybertron in search of said cube. That's the origin. It's simple. It works, there's nothing wrong with that explanation, it's just very, It's very different from what Transformers normally goes for, with most stories going for the Autobots fleeing from Cybertron, not just leaving their planet. In 90% of Transformers stories, it goes two ways. Either they are chased from Cybertron and that's how they end up fighting on Earth, like in the later Bumblebee movie, or like in the original TV show, the Autobots lose the war, flee, and end up on Earth with the Decepticons following them way later after Cybertron dies or something. But here, in the movieverse, both sides search for this cube, and it just so happens it landed somewhere that you guys probably could never guess. Yeah, it landed here on Earth. It literally could have been your backyard. I don't really have a problem with this. It's just their origin story, how they left their home planet. I just think that it's very interesting that seemingly for no reason, they just decided to bring in this random object instead of just going with an already familiar, loved route. It's just a little bit of a weird choice. Megatron crash lands first. in search of the cube. But unlucky for him, he landed in the Arctic. Basically, he freezes. And he stays frozen. Yeah, until this dude comes along, finds him by accident, messes with him, sparks up his navigating device so that everybody knows, oh guys, the cube is right here on Earth, but the cube's actual location just gets imprinted on these glasses, making them the most important glasses to ever exist. These glasses fall all the way through the family, all the way to Sam, our alright main character who accidentally purchased an alien robot car and clearly didn't listen to his parents when they warned him about the internet. You know, when they warn you about being tracked, be careful of what you post online, maybe ever heard of a digital footprint, perhaps? Clearly not. Sam lists the glasses on eBay for some reason, because who's gonna want to buy a pair of broken glasses? On eBay of all places. And because of this listing on eBay, the Decepticons instantly find him.
Are you username ladiesman217?
But hey, Optimus Prime is finally here. And with him here, we can go back to the cube. Them glasses, the really important ones, as I said before, they have the exact coordinates for the cube on them. So yeah, great going putting those on eBay, buddy. And those glasses basically get Sam into so much shit for the rest of the movie. The glasses? FBI wants him, so his house gets raided, he gets arrested, and Bumblebee gets sentenced to robot prison. The glasses, yeah, leads the Decepticons right to a frozen Megatron, so he gets freed. The glasses, well, they've got Sam the Cube now, and, well, he's got to run from robots bigger than buildings to protect it. All because of the glasses. Yeah, it's not an understatement to say this movie is just all about the cube and the glasses that lead to the cube. If you take a second to think about the plot and all the plot outside of the cube, there's actually nothing. But that's okay, Micheal Bay will mask it with another explosion. No, like literally. That's the trick. The other parts of this movie try extremely hard to just cover the nothingness of the plot. In simplest terms, this is just a weird take on a disaster film. It's got robots, weirdo becoming the hero, that type of thing, with just the cube being the super simple plot device that solves it all. It's not until you want to look at the movie for more than the Transformers that you really notice how dumb it is. You start with the robots, you start to develop a disaster plot, and well before it gets too real, let's just change it to the sex jokes.
The sextant.
It does this constantly. Throughout the whole entire film, it flip-flops back and forth from serious, cool, to comedic. All the time. You genuinely do not get a single second to think about all the sloppy elements of this film. Then the action is insane. The Transformers themselves look beautiful. You got all the familiar Transformers characters in a real life setting. It all makes the plot feel like the background, if that makes any sense. By the end of the film, I'm more interested in seeing them fight, like Optimus versus Megatron, rather than the sacrifice of the cube. No, I don't want to see that anymore. I just want to see them fight to the death or something. Think about it. Out of everything you remember from this movie, is it really the cube? I bet it's not. I think if they chose to make the cube just something a bit more familiar to Transformers, it probably would have worked a lot better and I'd actually remember it. The second movie did a way better job choosing an actual plot device, bringing in the matrix of leadership. But why didn't they just do that the first time around? There's so many memorable Transformers stuff that they could have chose from. Nobody remembers this cube, and it's not like it's something familiar to Transformers. It's just a plot device created just for this movie, and it's just very random. But I like it. Not the cube, of course not the cube, but the plot. I think it does just enough to make the rest of the movie super memorable and just fun. All the scenes with the bots in the film are perfect. The amount of memorable quotes and just the scenes. Hell, I still remember Bone Crusher crashing through that bus the very first time I seen it. It all really was the perfect place to start before it all goes downhill. And it went downhill really fast. These movies get really bad. My car. All Sam calls Bumblebee, who is meant to be his guardian, best friend, the most important relationship of this movie, is my car. What a beautiful relationship. My car. Why doesn't Sam bond with the bots, like, at all? The human-robot bond has always been an essential part of Transformers. But here in this movie, Sam can't even say Bumblebee, and if he talks to the other bots at all, it's nothing more than a few sentences. Human protagonists have always been a huge part of Transformers. Spike Witwicky from G1, Sorry from Animated, all four of the main humans from Transformers Prime. All have very unique and important relationships with the Transformers. Here, that just doesn't exist. And that's a really big mistake. Transformers always has been about the man and machine trope. It's not Robot Fight Club or a human military movement. You gotta have both of them for it to be Transformers. So I think it's very understandable to get upset about that aspect. It's a very big part of Transformers, and the fact that it just feels like it's missing, that it feels like they don't get any closer throughout the period of the movie, is something that's more than valid to be very upset at. In the future films, the writing gets bad, and the circumstances around said writing also gets very bad. Here though, in Transformers 2007, everything looks good, everything checks out. It looks like they had the time to write the movie out. So I really got a question. Both writers for this film are credited as Transformers fans, so I would imagine they have at least a good idea of the series. So how did one of the most crucial elements of Transformers just go completely missing in this film? Sam doesn't even need to be super close with them. After all, it's an action movie and they've only just met. But a few scenes would have worked wonders for fans. Oh right, they're just too busy making scenes about Sam and his happy time.
Sam's happy time.
I start to ask even more questions though when Sam's girlfriend, Michaela, has a scene that specifically brings her closer to Bumblebee. Granted, the scene itself was obvious setup to give Bumblebee a bit more action, still it involves elements of her character being used to bring her closer to Bumblebee. Where was that for Sam? Who knows? Why didn't they just make her the main character? If you're doubting me, just listen to me, alright? Every single time I rewatch this film, I just can't help but wonder, why did they choose Sam, this loser type character, rather than a character that seems to actually have character like Michaela? They make it very apparent that she's a girl who loves cars, loves working on them, has a history of doing so, and they make it a point to show that she's insecure about this. Guys don't like that she's good with cars. She's uncomfortable with presenting this quote-unquote manly enjoyment of hers. And she even ends like her and Sam's first interaction with asking, do you think I'm shallow? It's almost like this is the character arc being set up in a movie all about talking cars. Why couldn't Michaela, who has the interest and setup for it, just be the main human character for this movie? She has all the tools needed to make an enjoyable and meaningful lead. Think about it, her character could have easily meant something like, oh, it's okay to have an interest in these boyish topics like cars and transforming robots. And sure, you could surely argue that this isn't a movie that's meant to be heavy or emotional or anything like that, but something is better than nothing. Sam is nothing. He's given no real reason to want to help the Autobots besides maybe wanting to be a hero. Sam is just a big loser. Disaster-ish films have this like weird obsession with making the lead character like the biggest loser you can think of. Remember 2012? I think everybody's seen that movie, not because it's good, because it's really bad. That's probably why everybody's seen it. Yeah, I forgot what the lead character's name is, but I do remember him being a good-for-nothing dad, the type of character you wouldn't like, you wouldn't want to follow, but at least he saves the world. Isn't that right, guys? Shia LaBeouf is great though. Regardless of what I think of Sam, he did a really good job being Sam. While I do really believe the writing needed a lot of work, his acting made so many scenes so powerful and all the more memorable. And you know, he's probably the biggest reason why so many fans do enjoy Sam. His character wasn't great, but Shia made sure that his performance was great, and that's all I could ask for from an actor. The dialogue though, man, not so great. I don't know if it's maybe because the film came out in the 2000s and I didn't watch it till like 2013 at the earliest, or maybe it's because I was 10 when I finally did see it, but oh god, I've just never liked the dialogue. The humor is the main problem, and while I'd like to be nice and say, oh, you can find whatever you want to find funny, no. It all sucks. It sucks in a way where it's kinda so bad that it's good sometimes. But most of the time you're left kinda cringing thinking about why would they ever even say that? There's a large amount of weird sentences and this trend continues into every movie. Some of it's dumb. Like, it sounds like something I'd say to my friends at 3 a.m. in an Xbox party.
I just wouldn't peg you for mechanical.
Then some of it gives you that disgusted wince.
Criminals are hot.
And it's far more often the latter. Also, the movie is PG-13, and because of that, I couldn't help but think of the amount of 13-year-olds who just went to see this movie with their parents. They were then forced to sit through these weird sexual jokes with their parents right next to them, just in silence.
Were you masturbating?
The dog is also a drug addict. Bumblebee lubricates on a man. Ironhide really wants to kill people. Well, okay, that one's kind of funny, but you get the point. I don't like the dialogue, and I never have. My rewatches of these movies are constantly filled with, oh god, they're gonna say that soon. And it's kind of like, oh, I gotta prepare myself, because why? Yeah, it's just always really dumb or just really oddly sexual. Basically, it's like a normal Micheal Bay film, and just explosions and sex. What a brand to have. An unknown helicopter descends into a military base. The military itself can't get anything from it. The pilot won't respond. Complete radio static. And then out of nowhere, it begins to transform. This helicopter, seemingly piloted by a human, becomes this huge destructive robot. The robot then, with ease, manages to wipe out the whole entire military base, leaving no survivors. This is the opening to this movie, and 17 years later, it's still a jaw-dropping sequence. It easily showcases the best parts of this movie. Of course, I had to save the best for last, the actual Transformers. I think we can all agree that regardless of opinions about the guy, Micheal Bay did a perfect job bringing the Transformers to life. He actually made them like the coolest we've ever seen them. You know, seeing Optimus slam Bone Crusher across the freeway, to sliding down buildings to face Megatron, all the way to just delivering this hard speech at the very end of the movie. It's perfect. And hey, regardless of all the parts of these movies that are weirdly bad, when I look back, these moments make watching the movies worth it every single time. Micheal Bay is this action dude who always has these explosive action scenes, and Transformers being full of destructive action, he crushed it. Most effects were done all on set and pretty much are all practical. Well, of course not the giant moving robots. But you know when you see the village being blown up at the very beginning of the film, yeah, he actually blew up a prop village for that, just for this movie, which is just pretty crazy to me. You made this whole village just for the sake of blowing it up, just to get this scene in a movie. And it's like, if he wanted to be lazy, he probably just could have had a team do this whole scene digitally and did it with a big green screen set. That wouldn't have surprised me, considering there's already so much visual effects in this movie. But I really appreciate the effort because there's so many beautiful scenes that probably look so much better because they are done practically. Most of the action was done practically to save money and time that would have been spent doing visual effects. And considering they already have so much visual effects to do when it comes to the Transformers, it's a really cool thing they got someone like Micheal Bay who is actually really good at practical effects and making stuff go boom. He honestly did a perfect job, and I feel like sometimes he just doesn't get the credit for it. I know the Micheal Bay jokes are really fun. Okay, I've been talking about him all video, I've been joking too. I'm part of it. But he really did try his hardest for this film, it seems like. While later his choices may get worse and worse for these films, it's important to be fair and admit Bay deserves tons of praise for this film. He put so much work into every single scene for this film. Scenes like this one, where Bee and Ironhide hold up this Furby's truck. Why a Furby's truck? They hold it up to try and contain the explosion of a missile. And of course it goes wrong, but the scene is super beautiful in the movie. It personally remains super memorable because of just how good it looks, and it's just really cool seeing these huge robots pull this truck up just for it to get blasted to pieces. But guess what? That truck appears on screen for about 15 seconds. But for this whole entire 15-second scene, Bay rigged this whole device that props the truck up and, holds it there, just for him to blow it all to pieces. All that just for this single 15-second scene in a 2.5 hour long movie. I think that alone says a lot. Now, more than ever, considering movie studios seem to prefer to do everything with visual effects now, and the results of that being very mixed. It's a lot of effort not only to save costs on the movie, but to just make it look more alive, and I think Bay doesn't get the credit he deserves for that. Future films aside, he did so much for the action of this movie. Outside of all the action though, there's also a lot of choices this movie made when it comes to the bots that I absolutely love. Things like Bumblebee's voice, how it's become common for him to talk in radios, beeps, etc. That actually started here. From what I understand, in the creation of this movie, it was a huge point if the bot should speak English or in robotic beeps, or if at all. Whether it was a creative choice or the result of a time crunch, Bumblebee got stuck with the radio. That simple choice though basically became an essential to Bumblebee as a character, with most renditions after this film doing the same exact thing. Then there's the simple care for their origins. Work was put into making the Transformers seem Cybertronian. Things like Starscream's tattoos and all the glyphs the bots are covered in. These are special details intentionally put there to make you feel like they're all the more alien. You don't want these Transformers to feel like normal Earth robots that are normally depicted in media. You want them to feel like alien robots. And I like that care to detail. Speaking of the bots' designs, each bot is really unique despite what people seem to say. I've heard a lot about these films and that the Transformers in the Bay films specifically are gray masses, super messy, and whatever. And while I do agree a lot of these issues become prevalent in the later films, here I would say none of said issues exist at all. The legendary Peter Cullen returns to play Optimus, him himself becoming synonymous with the character. Personally, Optimus is my all-time hero. Everyone has their Batman, Spider-Man, but me, I looked up to Optimus and in turn Peter Cullen. He deserves all the respect. And Bay's Optimus is one of my personal favorites. I love the flames a ton as it makes his truck form look really cool and all the more unique and recognizable. The choice to add them is a choice to help with cameras just not being so good with reds. And regardless if you agree with that choice or not, I do appreciate the effort to keep Optimus looking like Optimus. Personally, as I said earlier, I love Micheal Bay's Optimus Prime, and he's really good in this film, and I wish he stayed that way. Megatron is kept as his arch nemesis, and he also looks great. I've always loved the small detail in how his head is sculpted like a crown, reminding me that, it's Megatron. He's obsessed with ruling, just a small detail, but his design's cool. Then, every other bot looks great as well. The choice to make all the shiny sports cars the good guys, but the military machines the bad guys, was definitely intentional. And I think that's a simple but really effective and cool choice. Not only does it manage to make the characters easier to recognize and realize what side they're on, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done with giving people these assumptions that, oh, military vehicle, bad guy, and stuff like that. With that choice in mind though, still most of the characters were able to stay true to their cartoon roots. Ratchet the Doctor stayed as a medical vehicle. Ironhide, a bot normally involved with weapons, military, remained a strong truck and kept his weapons-involved personality. Starscream, a character that we all remember as the whiny jet, stayed as the whiny jet we've all loved. I'm a big fan of the Transformer choices in this movie, and I do especially love that it seems like there was tons of care put into making the Transformers as best as they possibly can be. And yeah, of course I'm a huge fan of the way they look, obviously, but the effects that bring them to life are really the best part. The teams over at Digital Domain and Industrial Light and Magic really did some magic. Rather than stuffing them into the background or limiting screen time as much as possible, the awesome choice was made to keep the Transformers very alive, like as much as possible. That meant years of digital effects work and effort, and it really paid off. Take a look at all the transformation sequences in the movie, and then imagine the tens of thousands of moving, animated parts for every single one of these scenes. Then consider the amount of time it must have taken for each of those parts to be created. Then imagine all of that with the fight scenes, multiple characters, with the destruction, effects, and think of how great it all looks. It's flawless. All of this great work for the Transformers to feel like real life walking Transformers, to give us them on the big screen. The team really understood what they needed to do, and it made these movies better than I as a kid could have ever imagined, and they still even managed to shock me. They really do deserve the appreciation, the visual teams, Bay, and the actors, everyone, for managing to make the most important part of all, the Transformers, feel perfect. Transformers 2007 has a lot of good, and a lot of bad, like I said at the beginning. I still think that, even after watching the movie over and over and over throughout many years. I love Transformers, and I think this movie brought the franchise to heights only dreamed of considering how well they were done here. For me, for others, for people who had never even heard of Transformers, it's done a lot. The Transformers on screen here are really some of the best we've ever seen, and the fact that it all looks so good is one of the reasons they feel and seem so magical. But if I look at this film for more than that, as like an actual movie, it's not so much. I can't help but complain about the lack of character and interesting plot, just to name a few of my issues. There's just a lot of missing pieces. But if I'm being honest, the rest of the movie does make up for said missing pieces. Too many scenes from this movie stuck with me when I first watched it as a kid, and they still do as an adult. I can't help but rewatch these movies over and over and still gush about how good they look. Transformers 2007, I'll never be able to stop coming back, and as much shit as I do talk about you, you still shine, and well, I'm happy I revisited you yet again before we get another brand new Transformers movie. If you enjoyed this video and watched all the way through, thank you. Remember to click the button, the other little button, and maybe if you really want to, the other little button. Thank you yet again, and I'll see you whenever the next video is.
Bye bye!